No, this is not exaggeration. Syracuse football is actually in the conversation to land a 5-star edge rusher in the class of 2025.
You are Locked On Syracuse, your daily podcast on the Syracuse Orange, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everyone, and welcome into Locked On Syracuse. I'm Jackson Holzer, and thank you for making us your first listen of every single day here on the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day, and we're free and available wherever you get your podcasts. And on today's show, yes, it is accurate. Syracuse football is actually in the conversation for a 5-star edge rusher in the class of 2025. Plus, 2024 is obviously off to a really, really good start at 2-0, beating a ranked team already. How the Orange can capitalize on their momentum and turn it into really good recruiting and in the transfer portal for years to come. So stick around for a lot here on today's podcast. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. So the player that I am talking about is Javion Hilson. He is 6'3", 225 pounds. He is an edge rusher from Cocoa, Florida, and he is in the class of 2025. Now, this kid was in attendance for the Syracuse-Georgia Tech game, a pretty good game to be in attendance for if you are someone that is considering Syracuse, because it was a fun one in the Dome, and I'm glad that he was there to watch Syracuse beat a ranked Georgia Tech team, so that's obviously good. And then shortly after he was there, he decommitted from Florida State. And oh my goodness, Florida State is really in a tailspin right now. They've lost a couple of recruits already. We're living in a universe right now where Syracuse could be stealing Florida State recruits in football. Times are really changing right now, aren't they, right? Well, anyways, Syracuse is now one of 7 schools that is going to be getting a visit from Hilson. The other 6 schools are Georgia, Alabama, Texas, Michigan, Texas A&M, and Florida. If those programs are going after you, you're pretty good. You're going after the right kid because those schools are going after you. Those are pretty elite programs right there. Maybe some more than others. For 2 decades plus, before Fran Brown took over as the head coach for Syracuse, there is no way that the Orange would be even remotely in the conversation for a guy like Javion Hilson. Like literally zero chance. But here we are. As I said, times are changing, and now we're going to get a visit from this 5-star edge rusher. As far as his recruiting rankings, okay, I'm going to give you the best ranking that he has, and I'm going to give you the worst ranking that he has. Let's start with the best. On Rivals, he is a 5-star recruit, the 15th best player in the country, and the number 1 edge rusher in the country. That's Rivals. That is his best, okay? It's a pretty good top end if you ask me, right? On ESPN, they have him at the lowest. He's a 4-star on ESPN, the 71st best player in the country, and the number 11 edge in the nation. So he is ranging anywhere from 15 to 71 across all of the major recruiting services. If your lowest ranking is 71, you are an elite prospect. You can play football at a pretty high level, okay? As far as a player prototype, Locked On Seminoles host Brian Smith, he is also a recruiting expert. He did a nice breakdown of Javion Hilson, and to summarize it for you, he essentially said that Javion Hilson is your classic weak side edge rusher, aka what every team across any level of football is looking for. Seriously, like name me a program, I don't care what level, that is not looking for a weak side pass rusher. Name me one, because I promise you, you can't. That is something that every team is striving to have. And that's what you're getting in a guy like Javion Hilson. For whatever school ends up getting him, hopefully it ends up being Syracuse. As a person, what type of kid is he? Full disclosure, I've never met Javion Hilson. I've never had a conversation with Javion Hilson. But I did look on his Twitter page, and he does have a 3.5 GPA. So he's a good student. And good student, it doesn't necessarily, I put it this way. If you're a good student and you have a 3.5 GPA, you don't get that by accident. I believe that translates to a positive work ethic and someone who clearly has his head in the right space. Again, I don't know Javion Hilson, but looking at his high school GPA, you can kind of infer of what type of kid this player is. He's one of the best players overall in the country. He has obviously the pick of the litter to choose from, and he's still a good student. And he's going to get a lot of NIL money too. Still a good student. I think that tells you what type of kid he is. And once again, if you want a more comprehensive breakdown of Javion Hilson, I highly suggest that after listening or watching this podcast to go to Locked On Seminoles, where Brian Smith does a 10-minute breakdown of who Javion Hilson is. He has actually seen him play, and I'm pretty sure he has met him as well. So he can provide a little bit more than maybe what I can. But what I can tell you is his recruiting ranking, what type of player he is based on what Brian Smith said, and also the fact that Syracuse is actually in the conversation to get him. Not saying they are going to get him. I'm not going to sit here and guarantee it. But hey, they're one of 7 schools that are now getting a visit with this kid after he recently decommitted from Florida State. That's big time. To reiterate what I said off the jump, this would not have been possible for the last 2 decades if not for Fran Brown. No chance. There was a world one time, maybe it was before I was born, where Syracuse football would get elite recruits. They would. Those high-end 4 stars, the 5-star guys. Not really recently, up until Fran Brown took over as the head coach for Syracuse. So once again, the main takeaway is that the Orange are in the conversation to land a 5-star edge rusher in Javion Hilson in the class of 2025. And I'll just go out on a limb and say it. If they land him, he's the best player in the class. I don't really care. Or in Syracuse's class, I don't care who else they get. He would be the best one in the class if they were to get him. So hopefully Syracuse can continue this momentum that they are building. Maybe they can get a guy like Hilson. Maybe they don't. But coming up, how the Orange can translate their success to recruiting and in the transfer portal, because they both go hand in hand. So stick around. Fuel up with Factor's no prep, no mess meals. Meet your wellness goals thanks to the menu of chef-crafted meals with options like Calorie Smart, Protein Plus, and Keto. Factor's fresh, never frozen meals are dietitian approved and ready to eat in just 2 minutes. So no matter how busy you are, you'll always have time to enjoy nutritious, great tasting meals. Make today the day you kickstart a new healthy routine. And what are you waiting for? With 35 different meals and more than 60 add-ons to choose from every week, you'll always have new flavors to explore. Head to factormeals.com/LockedOnCollege50 and use code LockedOnCollege50 to get 50% off your first box plus 20% off your next month. That's code LockedOnCollege50 at factormeals.com/LockedOnCollege50 to get 50% off your first box plus 20% off your next month while your subscription is active. You've heard us talk a lot about FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. Well, we have something a little different for you. Now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Then with a YouTube TV base plan, you'll be able to watch every regular season Sunday afternoon out-of-market game. All you need is a Google account and a current form of payment, and you can cancel at any time. And if that's not enough for you, be sure to check out FanDuel's Profit Boost in the app and use it for FanDuel's double your winnings for all of Sunday, September 15th, pregame money line bets. Profit Boost will be live starting actually today, September 12th. View your account page now to learn more about your boost. Just visit FanDuel.com to download America's #1 sportsbook. So how can this season help Syracuse in recruiting? Okay, that is the main question that we are going to try to answer right now together. Syracuse, in the class of 2025, has the 41st ranked recruiting class in the country, and it is 9th in the ACC. Heading into this year, 2024, Syracuse had the 37th ranked recruiting class, which was 8th in the ACC. And to summarize what I was saying all offseason about their recruiting, just to give it a little bit more context for you, this is the best Syracuse has done recruiting-wise in football in over 2 decades. And the best part about it is they did this recruiting without playing it down. Seriously, they did it without playing it down. Fran Brown comes over in December of 2023, brings over a good number of players for the class of 2024. And obviously, he's been recruiting 2025 and 2026 before Syracuse played a snap. They already have 28 commits in the class of 2025. And those 28 commits, I'm pretty sure, all came before the football season started. So that's the best part about this. Now, in order to answer the question of how this season can really help recruiting and vice versa, how it can hurt recruiting, we have to understand that when a program is trending in the right direction, that is going to help you. And when they are trending in the wrong direction, that is going to hurt you. Now, for Syracuse, we can use actually ourselves as an example. We don't have to look around the country. I mean, Florida State would be a good example of this, but we can look right now at our own school. And we're going to use 2018, the year that Syracuse went 10-3, and really, truly, the last great year for Syracuse football. Hopefully this season ends up being close to 2018, if not even better. But that was the last big year where Syracuse went 10-3. They won a bowl game. It was the 3rd year under Dino Babers, and the Orange looked like they were on the up and up. So let's give their recruiting rankings now, prior to 2018, during the run, and then after 2018. And you'll notice a trend with Syracuse. Okay. And we're going to use 24/7 Sports for these rankings. In 2016, which just so happens to be the first year with Dino Babers, the Orange were 62nd in the country in recruiting. Okay. That's where they started with Dino Babers. In 2017, they were 54th. So they went up 8 spots, even though they weren't even good. They were 4-8, I think, in 2016. And even in 2017, they were also 4-8. Now, 2018, the year that Syracuse goes 10-3, the Orange were 51st in recruiting. So already they're knocking on the door for the top 50, and Syracuse capitalized on that by having a good year in 2018. Their 2019 recruiting class was 47th in the country. So when Dino Babers took over in 2016, the Orange were 62nd. And by the time 2019 had finished, even though 2019 was not a good season for Syracuse football, because of the success they had in 2018, in the span of 3 years, their recruiting ranking jumped by 15 points or teams, whatever you want to call it. But they went from 62nd to 47th in a 3-year window. That's a big jump. That's a big jump in recruiting. Now, here is the problem. Here's the problem. We all know what happened after 2018. Obviously, in 2019, they still get a really good recruiting class. That's where they peaked. But 2020, Syracuse goes 1-10. We don't want to speak much about that year. I won't. It was a bad year. Bad year for the program. Wasn't good, right? They were 57th in recruiting. 2021, 60th. So now they're in the 60s again. And by the time you get to 2022, they are 68th in recruiting. So what's the lesson here? Because I know I maybe was a little bit, I hope I wasn't too confusing for you, but I was throwing out a lot of numbers. The program was trending in the right direction their recruiting ranking was going up. They were getting better. And then the momentum stopped and they started trending in the wrong direction and the recruiting ranking suffered. So for 2018, or not for 2018, so for 2024, what is the lesson? Obviously, Syracuse can only control how they do on the field for this year. That's obviously the only thing that they control. But by having a good year this year and telling you guys what their recruiting rankings were before playing it down, ever heard of flips? Ever heard of recruits flipping? You probably have, right? It's fairly common where players will flip their commitments. Now, I don't have names necessarily of who Syracuse can get to flip to them, but my point is that if you continue, or if they continue to have a strong season, come the early signing period on December 4th, they could get a number of players to flip over to Syracuse. We're seeing that with a guy like Javion Hilson, who we talked about off the top. I'm not guaranteeing that Javion Hilson is going to sign with Syracuse on December 4th. Okay, there are plenty of other schools that are interested in him. But even if it's not Javion Hilson, it could be someone that Syracuse was targeting earlier that didn't pick them. But hey, the program looks like it's doing well. Maybe they were a little bit skeptical, and now you don't have to be as much anymore because you have a big season in 2024. So having a big year in 2024 will help recruiting tremendously. But it's not just 2024. It's not just 2024. It's beyond that. I told you, I gave you the rankings of recruiting. They were trending upwards. And then they fell back down because they started losing. So you have to also build sustained success. That means they also need to have a good year in 2025 and in 2026 and in 2027. You get the idea, right? It goes back to the, hey, if your program is trending in the right direction, if they're winning, you're going to get players to come. And it's the other way around too, where if your program is trending in the wrong direction and you're losing, players aren't going to come. It's pretty simple, right? So it's not just 2024, but for 2024 purposes, you can get players to flip into the following year's class if you have a big season this year. And it also works for the transfer portal as well. We're seeing some of the top transfers like Kyle McCord and Fidel Diggs have really, really strong start to the years. So when the transfer portal opens up again this season, Syracuse can point at those guys and be like, hey, transfers, look what Fidel Diggs did. Look what Kyle McCord did. Look what Clarence Lewis did. He became a starting corner for us. You can sell kids that in the transfer portal as well. So recruiting-wise, transfer portal-wise, 2024 is such a big year for Syracuse football. And I'm so happy that they are off to such a strong start because that means it's going to translate to strong recruiting and it's going to translate to strong transfer portal classes. And hopefully they can continue beyond 2024 to keep the trend going forward. Does that make sense? So once again, Syracuse in the running for a 5-star edge rusher in the class of 2025. We just talked about how 2024 can really help recruiting also beyond 2024 as well. But there's one area that I haven't really talked about a lot yet. This is something that Syracuse really needs to do. They need to send players to the next level. When you're hiring for your small business, you want to find quality professionals that are right for the role. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs has the tools to help find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. And guys, LinkedIn, it's not just a job board. LinkedIn helps you hire professionals you can't find anywhere else, even those who aren't actively searching for a new job but might be open to the perfect role. In a given month, over 70% of LinkedIn users don't visit other leading job sites. So if you're not looking on LinkedIn, you're looking in the wrong place. On LinkedIn, 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. Hire professionals like a professional on LinkedIn. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. That's linkedin.com/lockedoncollege to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. If Syracuse football wants to continue trending upward in recruiting, they must send players to the NFL. Period. They have to do that. There was an article that was posted this offseason, and it was from Marvin Harrison, who is now with the Arizona Cardinals, it was about Marvin Harrison, who's now with the Arizona Cardinals. I forgot who actually published the story, and I remember the headline being a very misleading headline of what the article was. But regardless, there was something that Marvin Harrison said there that I think can apply to Syracuse recruiting as a whole. So there was a question that was asked about why Marvin Harrison didn't really consider Syracuse all that much as a high school recruit. Now, for some context for you, Marvin Harrison's dad is one of Syracuse football's all-time greats, an all-time legend in the Pro Football Hall of Fame. And it's almost like a Kyan Anthony and a Carmelo Anthony type comparison for those that may not know. Okay, so this is Marvin Harrison Jr. that we're really talking about, and why he didn't really consider Syracuse all that much, even though his dad went to Syracuse and had a lot of success and everything like that. And Marvin Harrison's answer was very simple. How many wide receivers have the Orange sent to the NFL recently? The answer is not many. I don't know the number off the top of my head, but not many receivers recently from Syracuse have gone on into the NFL. Okay? Now, of course, in this instance, he's talking about wide receivers. And of course, Marvin Harrison went to wide receiver U, which is the Ohio State University. That's where you go as a receiver. But regardless, his principle can apply to any position in football. Any one of them. It doesn't have to be wide receiver. It can be any one of them. And the bottom line is that if you want to get players to come to your school, you're going to have to show a proven track record of getting players into the NFL. I know we talk a lot about relationships. They are important. Obviously, they're important. You can't get players if you don't have relationships. And money is obviously an important factor as well. And we talked about sustained success of the program. But for most of these college athletes, for most of them, I can't speak for all of them, but for most of them, they want to move on to the professional level. In this case, professional football, the National Football League. That's where these players want to go, or at least most of them want to go to. They want to go to the NFL. They want to be coached so that they can play in the National Football League. Because let me let you in on a little secret. There's a lot of money in the National Football League, especially if you make it big time there. So players, that's where they want to go. They want to get to that level. And I don't want to sound like I'm dogging too much on the Syracuse program, because obviously Syracuse does have a rich tradition of sending players to the National Football League. We do, right? I mean, Jim Brown, Ernie Davis, Floyd Little, Larry Zonka, John Mackey, Art Monk, Dwight Freeney, Donovan McNabb. We can go on and on. Syracuse has plenty of legends that have gone on to the National Football League. So what's my point with all of that? Well, if you're going to sit here and you're going to recruit a high school kid, it's not that or even the transfer portal. It applies for the transfer portal as well. But if you're going to sit there and recruit these guys, bringing up players that came up a long time ago doesn't necessarily apply to now. It's not that they wouldn't necessarily care about the tradition, but it's almost like, what have you done for me lately? What can you show lately? Have you updated your resume? That's what it really is. Let me give you a comparison to Alabama, okay? Did you guys know that Joe Namath went to Alabama? He might be the best quarterback that's ever come through Alabama. When Alabama is recruiting a quarterback, do you think that they are telling the quarterback, hey, Joe Namath went to our school? Probably not, right? Probably not. You know what Alabama will say to a quarterback that they're recruiting? we have developed 3 first-round quarterbacks in the past 5 years. Tua, Bryce Young, Mac Jones, those 3. You could say what you want about them of how they have been in the professional level, but from a college football standpoint, they were all first-round NFL draft picks. Clearly, Alabama did something right. That is what sells kids, more so than the tradition factor. And it's not to say, again, that Syracuse has nobody recently who has gone on into the NFL, because they do. Matthew Bergeron was a second-round pick recently to the Atlanta Falcons as a tackle. Andre Cisco was a third-round pick to the Jacksonville Jaguars recently, and he would have been higher than a third-round pick if not for a knee injury. There's others involved there as well. Zaire Franklin just got a big payday with the Indianapolis Colts heading into this season. Good for Zaire Franklin. So Syracuse, and Sean Tucker, obviously, with the Buccaneers. So Syracuse does have some players that have gone on into the NFL, but last year they didn't. They didn't have a single player get drafted. So what is that to say about this current roster? Well, on this current roster, I'd argue that there's anywhere right now between 4 to 9 NFL players on it. Between 4 and 9. I think these 4 players are guaranteed at minimum next season to be at an NFL training camp. Those 4 players are Oronde Gadsden, Fadil Diggs, Kyle McCord, who's certainly playing like it, and Marlo Wax. I think all 4 of those players are going to be at an NFL training camp next offseason. I'm not going to include LaQuint Allen necessarily on that list because LaQuint Allen has another year of eligibility. And unlike Oronde Gadsden, I don't think if LaQuint Allen were to declare right now for the NFL draft, he would be a day 2 pick like Oronde Gadsden would. So I think it's like, I don't know exactly what's going to happen, but I would guess that LaQuint Allen doesn't declare for the NFL draft after this season. Probably waits. But still, he'll probably be at an NFL training camp at some point. Also, Justin Barron deserves a shout out, Elijah Clark, and the 2 tackles, Demetrius Weatherspoon and Savion Washington, also could potentially crack NFL training camps at some point. And there's other players on the roster who could, but they're probably too young at this point right now. They're probably too young to judge. Like, I'm not going to sit here and be like, oh, Marcellus Barnes. Marcellus Barnes is a true freshman. I got no idea. Yassine Willis, true freshman. No clue. Jamie Tremble, same idea. Emmanuel, you got the idea. Okay, some players are just too young to be able to gauge on it yet. But for the guys who are a little bit older, that's who I see who potentially could be in an NFL training camp either next season or 2 seasons from now. So the bottom line with that, that's a really good starting level. Having anywhere between 4 to 9 players in the NFL as soon as next season or the season after, that's really good for Syracuse. This is good. This is positive momentum that they are building, because if you can get these players to the NFL, look, Kyle McCord's not going to be here next year. He's out of eligibility. But so when Syracuse potentially goes into the portal and tries to find a quarterback, or they try to find another one maybe in high school recruiting, you know what they can say? We developed Kyle McCord into the NFL. You know what they can say to maybe Javion Hilson? Fadil Diggs was a fine player in the SEC. He was a fine player. But guess what? We developed him even more. Look where he is now. Potential day 2 pick in the NFL. You can sell these kids that. That's big. That is positive momentum that Syracuse is building, and they have to keep it going. That means for next season, in 2025, same deal. They're going to have to send kids to the NFL. If you can send players to the NFL consistently, I promise you are going to get players to commit to your school. It's going to happen. Even if you don't have the same money as some other campuses. Even if you don't. If you can prove you can send them to the next level, they will come. Because for a lot of them, that's the ultimate goal. Get to the National Football League. So overall, I hope that was kind of informative for you guys of what Syracuse needs to do going forward with their program. The recruiting is really trending really, really well. Obviously, their recruiting since the Fran Brown era has started has been great, and I predict that it's only going to get better as this year goes on, because hopefully Syracuse can continue this strong start and have a really strong year. Because if they do and send guys to the league, folks, we could be building a really, really good program here. So I'm feeling good. I'm feeling really good. Thank you guys all so much for watching. Thank you so much for listening. If you like this video, click that like button. And if you really liked it, subscribe to the channel, turn on those notifications so you know right away when I am dropping the next podcast. And everyone, take care.